Okay, we are back to the board meeting and we are ready for business.
All right, let's bring this meeting to order. February 22nd, regular board meeting. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Coleman,
Present?
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Guziak,
Here.
Mrs. Ide,
Here.
Mr. Murphy,
Here.
Mr. Pederini,
Present.
and Mr. Quinones.
Present.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do we have any public comments?
No.
Does anybody have any additional non-action items they'd like to add to our agenda? All right, let's go on with the action items. The approval of the 2021-22 school year calendar.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school year calendar.
Does anybody have any comments on this or questions? No. Let's vote. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
No.
Ms. Ide,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Pederini,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Excellent. Now for the approval of registration fees and activity fees.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the registration fees and activity fees, which will remain flat from last year.
Second.
Does anybody have any final questions or comments before we go on this?
The only comment is the tech fee is reduced from $30 to $20 from what you're approving.
Oh, I should amend that then, shouldn't I?
Probably.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to amend my previous motion and make the motion be to approve the registration fees as presented.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mrs. Ide,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Pederini.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Moving on to the approval of review of closed session minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the review of the closed session minutes.
Second.
Did anybody see anything they want to question on the minutes?
I did not.
So I actually did have a question. So there were some of them. For example, like there's one where you were interviewed, Jason, about the superintendent role. So it seems just very innocuous to open up this document that just says that we interviewed Jason Lynn for the superintendent position. What are the possible issues with not making that public?
I don't know.
There were some that it's like you're discussing the topic, but it doesn't go into the topic itself.
Right.
So those just seem pretty innocuous to me.
If that was the only thing in that date, we could look at that and open it up next time. That'd be fine.
So we're gonna pull that date out, and we can pull that one out of the approvals, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, so November 10th, 2010. I think this is it. Yeah, November 10th. It's actually, so it's two-sided, so one is November 22nd and the other side is November 10th. They're really around the same topic.
You wanna amend the motion, Denise? Pull those out and we will look at those separately.
I'm sorry, what were the dates that you want to pull?
November 10th, 2010, November 22nd, 2010.
Okay, I'd like to amend the motion to approve the closed session minutes to pull out November 10th and November.
Is there a reason why, or did I miss that? Why are we pulling those?
It doesn't seem like there's a reason why we should keep it closed.
Okay, since those are closed session minutes, we can't put those up to discuss them at this point. So when we say we're going to pull them, are they going to be postponed to a different time?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
Will we discuss those this evening, or will we have to wait till the next COW meeting because we don't have a closed session published on our agenda?
Right.
We can discuss them this evening. You can add a closed session to any meeting.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so second on the amended motion? Somebody?
Second.
All, roll call, please, Ron?
Was that, Mr. Gray who seconded the amended motion?
No, it was, Jose Quinones.
Okay.
I don't think you can second it, could you, right?
Okay, but I'm sorry, before we vote, when is going to be the next closed session when these can be discussed?
Tonight?
Oh, we are going to do that tonight? Okay. I thought I heard that because it wasn't scheduled, we couldn't have one, but maybe I misheard.
No,
Okay.
she asked about, and Dr. Lynch said we can add a closed session to any meeting.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
Thanks for the question. Anything else before we vote? Roll call, please, Veronica?
Mr. Pederini?
Yes.
Mr. Quinones?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Buziak?
Yes,
Mrs. I?
Yes,
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passed.
Moving on to the final reading and approval of board policies.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final reading and approval of board policies as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Yep, so there are 3 policies I think we should look at. And if we can pull those up, that would be helpful. Sure. The first is 7.200, suspension procedures. And there's a section in there that says that the board hearing officer, the board may appoint a hearing officer for suspension rather than the whole board being in session for that. I don't know if that's something we want in the policy, just to call that out. Okay, so that's one. We can determine whether in fact we want that in the policy or not.
Is it, in the proposed policy, does it allow for?
It could be board or an appointee, right?
You
So then-
definitely want that.
We want both, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. That gives us some flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we discussed that. And then there's 7 to 290. The suicide and depression awareness, adolescent suicide awareness and prevention programs. In there, it said that the superintendent should have a suicide and depression awareness program adhering to Anne Marie's laws, and I'm just wondering if we have that. We do have that? Okay. All right. So it's not, and I just noted that the policy is not a big departure from what we already have in ours. So that's 7290, and then 7305, that's for the concussions, student athlete concussions and head injuries. In that policy, they say that they must develop a plan to manage concussions and head injuries, and the board must appoint a member of the concussion oversight committee,
Correct.
which we don't have. So I was just saying in the future,
We did,
so we don't
we don't.
currently. So I'm just saying in the future if we adopt this. And, you know, that's something that we need to address in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see any reason to pull these out. I just wanted to make us aware of these provisions.
We do have a concussion oversight committee. It's just not, the board hasn't.
We just
taken
don't have an
action.
appointee. Right.
I have a question about the suspension one where you're appointing somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't override the rest of us for like suspending a particular.
No, it's an or.
Okay.
It's an or. So, I mean, if you, in case there's a situation where we can't get a quorum, right? And it appears that there's not a quorum, then you can have an appointee. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's a appointee that you designate prior to, or if there's someone that's a standing position. You know, in the event that we can't get everyone together.
Typically suspensions aren't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've had one in my career suspension that's been reviewed,
Mhm.
and I managed that process and had a hearing with the parents, and I believe I offered them to go before the board.
Yeah.
Said you can do the board or you can do me, and the board was fine, and I did it. So, you know, it saves the board a lot of time, because it's
Sure.
very time consuming.
Sure.
Your involvement wouldn't be necessarily, even in a hearing, you just show up to that, process, and they present the case, and parents would present the case, the administration would present their case, and then you would have a, closed session ruling on that decision, either for or against or change. And there's rules that would go along with that in the process, so, typically, suspensions are not board
Right.
related.
Okay.
Expulsions, on the other hand, are definitely board. Boards have to expel a student. Usually a principal is the one who suspends, or assistant principal. Now, we haven't had
Yeah.
an expulsion since I've been here in 15 years, which is awesome, and don't want to start that.
Yeah.
And suspensions are becoming more and more rare, especially with this policy and Senate Bill 100, which encourages restorative practices, which we are fully implementing as a district, and we try to do everything but suspend a student. We just don't want to do that if at all possible.
What's your ballpark, like the average is per semester?
Average what?
Suspension per semester?
Last year?
Or just in general? You don't hear about them
Did we
very
have
often?
3 or 4 last year?
All year?
All year?
Well,
Yeah. So this was just in that final provision, upon request of the parents or guardians.
Yep.
Review of the suspension shall be conducted by the board or a hearing officer when event.
is that low compared to neighboring districts?
Oh, I
Any
think
idea?
so. Yeah. Very low. It's a different philosophy of, philosophies over time have changed with student discipline significantly. We try not to use suspension if at all possible. Sometimes we need to get a student remote for a day or something, just to take a break and make a new plan, and that would be the circumstances, but generally, it's not a good tool.
I agree.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's it. Others are materially the same.
So you're not recommending we change anything though, right?
I don't think so.
Pointing
I don't
out
think
what
so.
we have to-
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to call that out. Anything that appeared to be an action item or any kind of material change, but there's not really any material change. And if there's anything that really looks to be a change, it's typically supported by law. So it's worth checking the pop-ups on the press policy site. There's nothing you can do there.
Well, thank you for that service. Ardre was reading these with you, right?
What's that?
Ardre was supposed to be reading these with you, right?
Yeah.
She's not here.
With them in spirit.
Maybe we get one of our new guys to help you out.
If anybody's up for reviewing policy, let me know.
Great way to get to know what we do and the rules and regulations for this year. But let's, go ahead and vote on this. Veronica, please roll call, please.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Federini,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mrs. I,
Yes.
the motion passed.
Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda with the approval of minutes, personnel reports, treasury reports, bill approval, and activity accounts.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Do we have any questions or comments on this agenda?
Had, 2 counselors resign?
Yeah, they haven't been with us. One's going back to school in Milwaukee. And I don't know what happened with the other one, but.
Yeah, we have our highest turnover with that group,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
because they only work 4 hours a day typically. And a lot of times you get people who are in college or doing those kind of things and doing it as a part-time job.
Are they split between here and there, or do you have one here? and
No,
one-
it's primarily here.
Okay.
This is the MVAC.
So it's
After
basically
school program.
kindergarten, or pre-kinder, or kindergarten through 6th grade, I believe.
Correct.
So it's more of a daycare thing, not a social worker type.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I did not know what that stood for.
Millburn
Millburn.
before and after school care.
Okay.
I thought it was club, but close.
Yeah.
Club care, whatever.
That makes sense.
Roll call please, Brown?
Mrs. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Federini,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
the motion passed.
All right. Information and discussion portion of our meeting. So let's get on with our fiscal year 20 audit.
Okay, with us today is Mr. Kevin Smith, who is going to present the audit results in summary. Mr. Smith, take it away.
Okay. All right, can everyone still hear me? We didn't lose anybody?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right, so unfortunately, I think you guys, the last couple of years, Kathy's presented. She's a little under the weather, so I'm going to step in for her and go over kind of the results of everything. Overall, the audit, field work, everything went well. Took a little longer than we would like, but we were waiting on some things with the GASB 75 report. That's your guys' OPEB, your other post-employment benefits. And just after that with scheduling and holidays and things like that, it went a little longer than we would like. Without that in the future, that shouldn't be an issue. But overall, everything went well. Went through internal controls like we do every year. We're required to obtain an understanding of your guys' controls. So in going through those and testing those, we didn't find anything that we thought were a significant issue that needed to be reported in any manner. So overall, your guys' internal controls look to be good and operating appropriately. So with that management letter this year, no current year management letter, same as in the prior year. So that's obviously good. The audit report itself, the opinion is an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. That's the best opinion you guys can get. So I know that's what everyone wants to hear. Financials overall, I usually like to start with the fund financials. Those are what you guys are, for the most part, are used to seeing. You guys do convert to accrual basis. I know you're used to seeing cash basis throughout the year, and then you convert to accrual for year end. But the fund financials themselves are the current financial resource focus. So that's more of your day-to-day activities. It doesn't include things like fixed assets and long-term debt, things like that. So it's more closely resembles what you're used to seeing. So overall, on page 17 of the report, you'll see your ending fund balances. Overall, there was a decrease of about $745,000, which really this year was driven by the increased capital expenses that you guys had in both the capital projects fund and the fire prevention and safety fund. These were obviously planned. You guys had transferred over a little over 1.3 million into the capital projects fund last year in preparation for these improvement projects. So that was planned. That was the main reason for the decrease on the fund financials. More specifically, certain funds, general fund ended at about 1.45 million, which is about a month of current year expense. Operations and maintenance is about negative $200,000, slightly below that, which is a little more of a decrease than last year. It's about 50,000 less than it was last year. Debt service ended at about $515,000 or $515,000, or about a month and a half of current year expense. This fund's a little more self-sufficient, so it's a little less important to have things built up. You guys levy for your most of your debt payments, so it's a little more self-sufficient year to year. There are some small transfers to cover some debt payments, but the majority these are levied for. The transportation fund is at about $665,000, or about 6.5 months of current year expense. So that one's in a good spot. IRMRF is negative, about $27,000. This did actually increase from last year, though. It was actually further negative last year. It's up about another $35,000 from last year. Capital projects, again, we kind of discussed this in the beginning of the overall, but you ended at $540,000. Not really beneficial to compare it to current year expense. Those expenses are obviously increased this year. So usually you plan for these things, you transfer funds in these to cover these projects. So I don't see anything, with the capital projects fund. You got a little bit of carryover, some things to finish with there, and that fund balance will cover that. Fire prevention and safety, again, similar to the capital projects fund, that ended at $120,000, but just for sake of comparing to the current year, not really a good comparison. Just for sake of comparison, the current year, you'd only be at about half a year of expense, but if you compare it to last year's expense, you'd be at 2 years. Again, this is a kind of a fund that's more capital in nature, and you guys plan for these types of things. So, overall, though, fund balances, it's still a little low. I think you guys know that or aware of that. But, as talking with some of these things with Kathy, overall, these have come a long way in the last 10 years or so. We had some information from Steve about, 10 years ago, your total fund balance was, negative $5 million. So you guys have had an increase of close to $7 million over the last 10 years. So you guys have come a long way, and things look to be going in the correct direction. So overall, then fund financials, the budget to actual statements that are in the back of the report. There were no expenditures that were in excess of budgeted amounts. Usually if there are, we do have to disclose those and point those out, but there were none for this year. Government-wide financials. So now, I think there was a couple questions on this from some of the board members, and how this fluctuates from year to year. So just an overall description of the government-wide financials. These are where you guys bring things on the books, such as your fixed assets, your long-term debt, the pension liabilities, the OPEB liabilities. Those all get brought on the books to bring you guys to a full accrual basis, and it has more of a long-term focus to it. So overall, once you bring those onto the books, obviously these pension liabilities, the OPEB liabilities are big numbers. So it makes your guys' net position look worse than your fund balance. Your fund balance is on the fund financial statements, and those can fluctuate more greatly from year to year, especially with the pensions, because a lot of those the funds themselves are invested in various types of whether it be mutual funds or U.S. Treasuries, and those will fluctuate with how the market's doing. So if the market has a bad year, the pension liabilities look worse. If they have a good year, the pension liabilities go down, and you'll get those fluctuations year to year. Some of those things are deferred and are recognized over a shorter period of time, but you will see fluctuations from year to year from that. Another reason that you guys have seen fluctuations and all other school districts have as well in the last 5 years is due to implementations of new GASBs. So years ago, GASB 68 came on. That's what required you guys to put all the pension liabilities on the books. That obviously took a hit to net position, brought it down, made it look worse. And then I think in 2017, you guys were looking a little better, which would have been because of the market. The liabilities are more funded better. But then 2018 came around, and that's when GASB 75 came into play, and you guys had to record all the pension liabilities. Not the pension liabilities, but the OPEB liabilities. So the other post-employment benefit liabilities. These are related to THIS for insurances related to your TRS employees, and also district OPEB liabilities. There's an actuarial calculation done that generates a liability based on retirees being able to stay on your insurance plan after they retire. So obviously you have an older demographic within your insurance. There's a liability attached to that with you guys paying higher rates. There's a liability that gets put on the book for that. It's estimated, brought to current value. So that obviously hits you guys in 2018, brought that position back down. So that's kind of where you kind of see some of the fluctuations that you guys had over the last 5 years. That's mainly what makes those occur. A good place I always like to point out to everybody. So your statement of activities within the report is on page 14 of the report. That shows your revenues and expenses on the government-wide financial statements. Things that are brought in and out of here are, like I said, like your debt payments, their expenses on the funds, they reduce the liability on the government-wide. So the debt payments are gone, outlay, those go moved up in the fixed assets, but then you have depreciation expense. So a good spot to see where those differences are and how this net position statement relates to your fund financial statements is to go a little further past onto page 18 of the report. That gives you a breakdown of the reconciliation of the top starts with your fund balance change, and then it gives you a description of all the different things that occurred to get you to your government-wide change. So your government-wide change was actually an increase in that position of $205,000 for this year. So it gives you a breakdown. You can see the first one is your depreciation expenses and expense on government-wide. Your guys' capital outlays for what you spend on fixed assets for the current year is actually taken off and putting up into fixed assets. So it's showing how all these different things affect that. That's always a good spot for you guys. The main things are really, it's your long-term debt, your fixed assets, and your pension and OPEB liabilities. Those are the main things that are affecting this. So overall, those are the statements themselves. Footnotes overall, you're going to see that they look very similar to prior years. No significant changes. There were new GASBs that affected anything this year. Nothing new that needed to be implemented. So as you're going through footnotes, they're going to look very similar to past years, only updated for current year numbers. So there's nothing new there. As far as going forward for fiscal year 21, GASB 84 is going to take effect. Was actually supposed to take effect this year, but due to COVID, it got pushed back a year. This is the fiduciary activities. These are going to take your guys' activity funds and essentially put the majority of them, if not all of them, onto the district books, because basically they're under control of the district itself. So those will be brought onto the books. That was supposed to occur this year, but didn't due to COVID. The next big one that's going to have an effect is GASB 87. It's not going to be in effect for FY21. It's going to be a fiscal year 22 issue. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to treat operating leases similar to capital leases, where you will have an asset for the operating lease and a liability that is going to be amortized over the life of the operating lease. It's not 100% clear on what all leases are going to fall under this. There is some talk about some certain types of learning material leases, as far as like online learning, things like that may extend longer than a year, that may be included in this. So our plan is for all of our audit clients, we are going to put together some things in order to go over this during this year's audit, since it's not effective for this year's audit, but then to give you guys a year to plan accordingly and start pulling any possible operating leases that may fall under this, so that you guys will have a full year in order to do that before it's actually effective for fiscal year 2022. So overall, those are the main things that I like to go over. So usually then after that, I just like to open it to any questions if anyone has any specific questions.
So I just have a quick question regarding the change in the fund balance. Is for a district of our size and an operating expense, is the reduction that we saw this year consistent with what's happening in other school districts?
It's a little hard to compare that just because you guys did have the capital activities. So, you know, there's other districts that didn't have a reduction, even if you're just looking at it on a percentage basis based on size. But they didn't have the capital activities. So, I mean, overall, you guys' operating funds, other than the O&M fund went down a little bit, the majority of them saw increases. So I think that's good there. But overall, you guys saw a decrease because of the capital projects you guys had. And that's a little hard to compare district to district because it just depends on, what the district has going on. So, I mean, next year, you guys could be in a good position, and another district's going to see a decrease just because they had planned activities going on for improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing too, the improvements that we had primarily were from the summer of 2019, but July 1 was the start of the new fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we paid some of the bills in 2019, and then the rest of them were paid in FY20.
Yeah.
So that's why you saw such a large amount of expenditure in FY20 and capital projects.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Future agenda items.
Sorry, just a quick question regarding this audit. So what are the next steps with the audit? What happens?
It gets filed with the Regional Office of Education, as well as some paperwork has to be sent to the State Board of Education.
Okay. Okay.
Future agenda items. Policy, revised policy 460, purchase and contracts, phone system update. Anybody else have any other additions that we should talk about in the future? Oh, wait, no, I'm jumping right. We're not still in information and discussion. Sorry.
Excuse me, Brendan. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's on my end.
No, I'm confused. I got lost on where I was on the agenda. We are talking about summer school now.
Right.
Okay. We, this is just very briefly convened a committee, started talking about different options for summer school. I sent out a letter today to the parents just letting them know that summer school is going to be an option. We don't have a lot of details yet, but we are working on it. And the board can look for some sort of proposal probably in March, specifically on what do we want to do, how much it's going to cost us, how are we going to find those funds, and what funds we will use to support the summer school program. So that will be coming. In the past, the summer school program was a self-funded program where parents paid tuition for that, but we're not looking to do that this year. We're looking at possibly grant money to support that, to curb learning loss and some other just general school replacement.
Is part of the proposal, what the criteria are for, well, I guess the question is there some type of eligibility criteria for being in summer school, or is it just, all comers?
That's what we have to determine. We definitely want to target the kids that need it most to encourage them to come. But we will have programs for other kids too, and just in general. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
So we're looking at possibly having enrichment activities along with more academic type activities, so kids can do both.
Right. Historically, how has it been? Did the parents just choose which kids they want to go to summer school, or is
We haven't done it for about 10 years, so.
Yeah, we haven't done it since I've
Oh,
been
okay,
here.
it's not an annual.
No.
In the
No.
past, was it just credit recovery, or was it acquisition too? Or just acquisition?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
We didn't have.
Like credit recovery, like they failed a class, so they have to
Yeah.
retake it, versus I'm taking a class just to get my credits out of the way, yeah.
Right. No, at the elementary, it works a little bit different. High
Okay.
schools, you would have more of a credit recovery.
Yeah.
We did have back a long time ago, 17, 18 years ago, there was a state law that said if you didn't pass a student on to the next grade, they had to have a 90-hour bridge summer school program. So Millburn at one point, I believe, operated that program, but then didn't have enough kids to sustain that. So I happened to be the summer school coordinator at Antioch School District, and we had Millburn kids who needed that bridge program come into that program as well. So, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's the last time any credit recovery type program would have been around. At this point, or back then, Millburn, most of the classes were, I would say, enrichment, where maybe like a Harry Potter reading class, or a cooking class, or a t-shirt dyeing class, or some sort of art project, or sports, or something like that.
More like a summer camp almost.
Sort of like a summer camp. And then they also had some remedial classes for students who were falling behind to keep them going, so parents could choose. And I don't know how Millburn's program worked because it kind of stopped operating. The interest fell off in those years. And just because there's so many options for kids in the summer now, it's really changed, and so there's just less parent interest for a partial day program. But I think this year there will be.
I was gonna say, additionally, we're still waiting on guidance from the state as far as how we can use these ESSER's grant funds that we should have hopefully within the next week or so, that may then have an impact on what we're able to do as far as what types of programs we're able to offer using those grant funds.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen so far is we have to use 20% of the total allocation directly for learning loss.
Okay.
That came out today.
Yeah, I didn't see that yet.
I'll forward that to you.
Okay. Not that I didn't get it, I just didn't see it.
Right.
Are you gonna use thought exchange to gauge interest level?
Probably not at this point. I would put out, maybe. I'll have to figure out how to do that. You almost have to put up our program and then see what registration is like.
I would think there's gonna be huge interest.
Would you
from
broadcast
a
that
lot
it
of
was gonna be
districts
free?
now, you know?
What's that?
I said, would you broadcast that it was going to be free of cost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would the idea be that it would be broken out by grade or by the type of activity?
Yes and yes.
If there's enough demand, right, then it would.
Yep, yeah, we talked about both. So for certain types of activities, you could have like a K2 group to get enough kids interested in whatever that topic would be. But then if it's a kindergarten, we talked about a kindergarten extension program, so you take the current kindergartners and they would do a kindergarten extension program in June, and then when they start in late July, when they come back to that second half of that program, then it would be a jump start into first grade. Just kind of that graduation thought process of transitioning into that next grade level.
Yeah.
We talked about a transition camp from 5th to 6th grade for those students to get introduced to the middle school. We've talked about that for a long time, just haven't had the funding and the impetus to do it. Just need a push. So there's lots of ideas, just haven't had enough meetings yet to solidify anything, other than we have an idea about dates.
Okay.
Then we'll come back to the board and say, hey, this is what we want to do. Are you okay with us using this grant money for $100,000 or whatever it might cost us? Or do we want to offset some of that with tuition? Do we want to ask for tuition for some programs and for other targeted academic programs not have tuition? Do we want to do it by income level? Do we want to do it by, how do we want to operate that? So those will be some questions that we have to work through with the board. It's expensive. It'll cost about, for 200 kids to do, if you had 10 kids in a class, for 200 kids, I'm guessing it'll be about $81,000. And that's without transportation, that's just straight up, and no materials, just what it would cost for us to have teachers be available for those kids for 3 hours a day, 24 days, 200 kids. It's about 20 teachers, 10 kids a class. And that's 20% of our students. So, depending on the interest,
Yeah,
you
it
can
could
see
be huge.
it could be huge. It could be much more expensive than that.
And you mentioned 3 hours. Is that what you're shooting for?
9 to noon, 4 days a week. So you have 3 classes. The way I ran the program, and Millburn actually ran it very similar, was they would have a reading class, a math class, and then some sort of activity class. Whether it be STEM, definitely interested in running a STEM program at the elementary. We have a beautiful STEM lab to get the robotics back going again. So, very excited.
You guys seen this demo?
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's pretty sweet.
Check it out.
Any more questions on summer school?
No, I definitely think it's important to have something though, for, especially academic wise, for kids that have been, struggling with the remote learning.
Yes, it is.
An opportunity to catch up.
District goals, 2021, 20.
I just wanted to remind, we don't have to read through all of these again, but just remind everybody that they're out there. We're going to talk about them tomorrow in our admin meeting to get some presentations going. We're behind a little bit this year on everything, it seems like, and everything takes longer than expected, but want to update the board on some of these goals. See where we're at. We have social emotional standards, student learning, of course, curriculum, safety, and financial. we hit financial tonight, so.
And then Denise is creating evaluation for the superintendent to see how well he's leading us to meet these goals. And then a little bit after, we won't be changing them anytime soon, will
The goals?
we? The goals, no. Okay. Any questions on the goals?
Last time, weeks ago, we did talk about, setting the 2021 into 2022 goals, like what the timing would be for that. I don't know if that's part of this discussion or if we just need a different agenda item for the next time we meet, but, Jason, you and I were talking about that a few weeks ago. Like the timing for that kind of makes it challenging because you generally get them, I don't know, did you say
I
August?
think we're talking about May, maybe April, May, setting those for next year.
Yeah, but I think historically we finalize the goals closer to the beginning of the school year.
Right.
Whereas we would want to get them towards the end of this school year to give you an opportunity to execute, to begin planning for them, right? Yeah, so it's just changing the timing of when we set those goals.
We like to keep him on his toes. That makes sense.
Yep, I think we talked about April, May.
Yeah, I think it's just aligning the board on what that timing is going to look like.
Agreed. Yeah, so it'd be nice to go into the summer with next year's rough goals to start to plan it.
I think that makes sense. I think it would just be best if we then also move the superintendent's evaluation earlier than when the goals are created as well. So I think if you're going to do the goals before summer, then the evaluation should happen maybe May or April.
And the question is, do we want to do the evaluation with this group we have, or do we want to wait till after the election where?
I think it would make sense to do it with the group we have.
So that would have to be done in the next couple of meetings. What do we got, 5 left? 4? Something like
Could
that.
be, yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense since we're evaluating on the goals that were set in the fall.
Mhm. Well, we can start it if you get that document ready, Denise, and then give it to Jason. He can put down what he's done, and then in March we could be looking at it.
Yeah, I can definitely have it ready and have that sent to Jason to look at and add his information. I think the challenge is going to be that we'll have to approve this tool then at our COW meeting and then do it at the regular meeting, which is fine. But if there's any revisions or anything like that, just to make sure that we can keep it moving.
We have to have a special meeting before the cow to take action, right?
Yep.
You'll just have to make sure you do it right the first time.
It's fine. I'll just put the goals into I'll put this year's goals into the document that you created in the fall for the use of this year.
Okay. Sounds good. And we'll put that on future agenda items for superintendent evaluations, aiming for March. Let's go on with our agenda as it is. Does anybody else have anything else on goals they want to ask or talk about? Move on to FOIA requests. WLS, requested access.
Yeah, do we have Any idea as to why they're asking for that FOIA?
No,
Okay, do we know if it was sent to any of the other schools in the area?
I believe it was sent to other schools, yes. I don't know which ones.
Okay, all right. So they might be on a fishing expedition. All right, thank you.
I think they're looking for a story.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thanks, Jason.
Remote learning updates.
Okay, I just want to point out that we have been, to this point, this was as of Friday, for in-school 58 days with our pre-KK, special ed, and CEDAL students. And we anticipate getting to 123 days by the end of the school year, thereabouts. I may have missed a day or two, but that's about what we're shooting for. And student attendance days this year are 171 student attendance days. So,
Pretty good.
yeah, you know, I'm really proud of our staff for getting that together and being able to get the kids in that much. Although it seems like they've been out more than in so far, but really it's been quite an effort to get them into as much as we did.
Sorry, Jason, I'm not following. So, what's the difference between days to present versus anticipated days? I mean,
Okay, so days to present, this is how many days they've been in person so far this year from the beginning of the school year. And anticipated days by the end of the school year.
Total.
If everything goes well, I anticipate that they'll be in for a total of 123 days.
And a total of 171 days in, whether it's either remote or in person.
Yes, yeah.
And why, so, what do we compare number two? Like, it sounds like it's good, but what should it be? Or what?
It should be 171.
Okay, so it's.
Well,
Ordinarily 176.
It would be 171, but if you're looking at how tightly restricted people were during this time, to say that we've realized 72% attendance in person, at least for that grade.
Yeah.
To me, that's actually surprising.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
Right, because people have said, we want kids in school, at least the overwhelming majority. And so to have 72 days in school, or 72% of the days in school, I think that's impressive.
As a point of comparison, I think what you're looking at, Jose, I'm not trying to disparage other districts or say that they're doing anything wrong. Woodland is going to have their first student in on March 1st. So they're at 0. My high school students, my own kids, are on day 8 total for the year, for the school year, just as a point of comparison. And I'm not trying to say that we're better than those other districts. They have other challenges. Every district has its own challenges. I'm just proud of what our teachers have been able to do. Thankful that we live in a community that has the resource of these buildings that are large and spacious, and we can spread out, and we have the staffing available. So that's what I want to highlight.
And it would, I mean, just kind of reiterate how good of a job everybody's done, especially you, Jason, with this. I mean, it was only but community spread that stopped the in-person attendance when we really got going. I mean, there was no incidents in school that would have caused us to close outside of the community spread. So, I mean, we were
a little close at the end. We were starting to see the impact. You could see as the numbers went up, and we're starting to get above that significant highest risk.
And what I think is impressive too is you made that a priority, and that was in the face of a really lack of good, firm guidelines.
Any
Right.
guidelines at first.
I mean, and that was the challenge, is that, is there something clear where you can easily make that call? Or were you put in a position where you had to make the call on your own? And I think that there was this ambiguity there and a lack of commitment to state, here are the guidelines. As a state, you're in or you're out of school. So I think that's incredibly impressive, 72%. Because that was part of the frustration, at least for me, is that we had public health boards. Where's the direction here? You know, so it shouldn't come down to people hanging their necks out that are not in the public health space. So it was a matter of making it a priority, and I commend you on that.
We sat in this library and tried to
Who here is a virologist?
decide what was
Or
best for the
epidemiologist.
public health of
Remember science from high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's the power of the local school board too, because having students come back is not right for every district. There's some districts who haven't had kids back, and that's the right choice for them, because they don't have the space or the staffing that we have. We have some advantages here. We've got families who can get their kids here. So many have driven their kids rather than put them on the bus. And
Yeah, commend the parents for that too, taking initiative and driving their kids.
we've got a lot
Absolutely.
of good things going to get this going.
And even 10 years ago, we had approximately 400 more students in the school district. We wouldn't have been able to have as many students on site. One of the meetings I was in the other day with personnel directors, they were talking about how in many of their districts, they don't have the space to space kids 6 feet apart and have a large number of kids back in a building, and still be able to support the remote learning that needs to continue at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, it was, we have the resources and it was still difficult for a variety of reasons. And I'm proud of the staff for how they went back. Jake and Ben probably did, I don't know, 20 schedules a day, it seemed like, and adjustments to try and get this to work, to get it so that we prioritized the kids being consistent. So we had we wanted them in 5 days a week for as long as we could get them in and still staff it. So figuring all that out and having staff willing to do that was an incredible ask of the principals and the staff. We have staff who are teaching out of positions that they've been for some up to 20 years, haven't been into the classroom, they've been in other roles in the district or in other districts, and went back to the classroom and did it.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
It is, across the board,
So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. And we said from the beginning, we're gonna prioritize the younger students. Said, let's do whatever we can to get the kindergarten in first and the first graders. And this is a reflection of, this is what we did. We did it as safely as we could. We prioritized the youngest and most needy kids, and they have the most days in person, and we will have. And so I'm thankful about it all worked out. So far, so good, and now I have more confidence moving forward that we'll be safe for this year with our staff and our kids because of the vaccines and because the community spread is significantly lower.
Absolutely.
Great job, thank you.
Going forward for the rest of the year, I don't know if you had a chance to read what I sent out today, but to everybody, we want to maintain this current schedule. So we have at the elementary building 5 days a week from 8 till noon, or 8:30 till 12:30, depending on the grade level. We can't go past, I should say can't, we always can, but it would cost us a fortune to have them stay for lunch because the kids would have to eat in their lunchroom. We'd have to hire somebody to cover the lunches in their classrooms, and then we'd have to hire someone to watch them in the afternoon. In addition to that, it's just not possible to staff because
because of the way we utilized our staff to get all the kids into lower class sizes so we could get them into rooms and space them out, we'd have to basically double our, not quite double, but add that many more certified staff just to get them lunch, recess, and specials.
Why is that though? Because, so, I mean, speaking with my children, right, it's the same teacher in person and then in the afternoon, remote. So isn't it the same number of staff? They're just gonna be working a longer day? And, or actually, no, not even a longer day. They're gonna be working the same amount, just completely in person versus half in person, half in remote. I'm not getting that.
So every teacher by contract has a 30-minute plan time, and we have daily team time.
Right.
The way that we currently give them that time during the student attendance day is 30 minutes of lunch and 30 minutes of recess.
Got it.
So someone has to manage those kids in that class for 30 minutes of lunch and 30 minutes of recess.
Okay.
Now, we couldn't take them outside
Yeah.
for recess we can eventually, but right now it's tough. And so, and you can't put them all in the lunchroom. What we used to do is hire 4 or 5 adults to watch kids in the lunchroom, and you could watch one whole grade level at a time, or 2 even, in the lunchroom. So you'd have 300 kids in one space, and then outside at recess you'd have 150 on each playground, and you'd have 3 adults watching those 150 kids. Now you'd have to break them up and have, for every 15 kids in a classroom, you'd have to have an
come in for an hour. Yeah.
you'd have to find enough people to watch them for that hour to cover, and we just don't have enough bodies.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it seems simple, but that's what kept getting hung up on over the summer, was how do we can't get them past, we couldn't figure that metric out to make that work. Until we said, okay, what if we didn't have them stay for lunch? Then we got to work, we got the class sizes down, we were able to manage bodies, adults, and children. That's the difference. And then, so our specials teachers, we've moved them into other responsibilities because we needed them to help cover other areas. So we would then need someone to watch the kids for 45 minutes and schedule that. That would be another issue.
And it's tough to find people that work part-time too.
Yeah.
You're coming in for like 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Future agenda items. More press policy updates. Phone system, revised purchasing and contracts. We're gonna have to do goals for 21-22. Superintendent evaluation, and probably board goals. April or May as well. Or board self-evaluation. Superintendent report.
The only other item that I didn't touch on would be sports starting up. So we're looking at getting some kids into activities, some of the more safer activities like girls volleyball starting this week. That's an activity where you can space kids out and they're not directly in contact with each other, or at least don't have to be or shouldn't be. So that's one of the safer sports. So as the numbers continue to come down, we'll increase that, and when we can get outside. So outside sports after spring break would be soccer, track, try and get golf, try and get another season or 2 in with more activities with kids.
Couldn't track start practicing inside?
Inside?
With masks? Don't really have to be in close proximity.
I'd rather not.
No?
Where do they run inside, like the hallways or,
They
in
have-
the gyms?
Yeah.
But there's so, we get, usually 175 to 200 kids out for track,
That's a
so.
lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, that'd be tough to manage,
I never would have thought
Keep-
that.
keep them apart.
That
Okay.
and cross country are the biggest sports,
Yeah.
as far as number of participants. Because you go, what is it, fifth grade on up, or?
Cross country allows fifth grade track.
I knew one of them did.
Interesting.
Wrestling, I don't know if that's gonna happen this year. It's tough.
Yeah,
You
how
know,
do you do that?
Come on,
High
guys,
school-
think big, think big.
What's
High
that?
school's planning on it.
It's killing me.
So,
Big Ten
respirator
championships
and
in 2 weeks.
rubber, scuba suit or something?
No, apparently, my son was telling me they have wrestling masks designed just for wrestling, but I don't know. We'll see. See what happens. That's all I got.
Thank you. Dr. Johns in our business office
Yeah,
report.
Jason, I just emailed that to you again, but Veronica also attached it, so if you refresh, then you can pull mine up on the agenda.
I'm having a hard time finding it. There we go.
Okay, the first two we've already talked about. The 3-year asbestos inspection is due. I did go ahead and contracted with Midwest Environmental, who's the company that we used when we did our removal in 2019, where we took up the floor tile in the STEM lab as well as another space in the building. They're also going to be doing some sampling in the lower level of the 1968 edition, where we had water damage, to determine if there's asbestos in the mastic. And then we'll move forward from there as far as if we need to bid asbestos removal for that area. But several of the tiles are starting to pop, and kind of, as you walked on them, you can see water squishing when there was still water on the floor. So we do have quite a bit of that needs to be dealt with. School lunch program, going to be shortly seeking people to serve on the triennial review of the Wellness Policy Committee. And there are some specific guidelines of things that we have to do every 3 years as part of the National School Lunch Program. Something else that is new, well, it's not new because they actually did something similar to this last year, but now they're using the data that we're uploading to the student information system for students that are on free or reduced lunch. Since we aren't serving lunch here at school, every school day that we have, those students will be eligible for an additional $6.82 on a debit card similar to the SNAP program, but it's going to be a separate card that families can use to purchase groceries, and it's actually going to be retroactive to the start of the school year. So they're going to get, some of them will get a chunk of money. But that is one of the things with the pandemic, and especially some of the service workers are, have really lost out on a lot of income, et cetera. And the big concern through this pandemic has been making sure that people have food to eat. And that's part of the reason why we've been so proactive in delivering food and sending food home with kids, even though sometimes it gets a little bit difficult. Kind of already talked about the asbestos. One of the things as we look at, once I get an idea as to what the insurance company is willing to pay for as far as replacing a floor tile, I have a fairly good idea, but some of the rooms had some damage, other rooms had almost no damage. So I still have to work through that with the insurance company about what they're willing to do. One of the things, though, that once we see that, I know the entire hallway is going to need to be replaced because it was all popping up. We may want to look at upgrading the floor tile from vinyl composition tile to either a luxury vinyl tile or some kind of a sheet vinyl product that won't require waxing. And if you look at how much time they spend stripping wax and re-waxing, ideally what you're trying to look at is the overall total cost of whatever product you put into a building. So that's one of the things that I'll be coming back and talking to you about once I have a little bit better handle on it, because ideally I want to do things that are going to still look nice, but by the same token require less maintenance. So we may look at doing something like that. We did something similar when we had some damage at the middle school. We went with a little bit of an upgrade on a carpet there in the media center and the computer lab next door, simply because it was a very small bump up, but yet it gave us a lot nicer product, and it was kind of in line with what the media center have been looking at as far as upgrading, as far as future plans. We did have damage to 2 or 3 of the rooms with ceiling tile just because of the amount of moisture. Those will be replaced. We didn't have any casework damage or any textbooks or materials damage, which we did have the last time we had water, which was in 2017. We do think we hopefully are going to be getting to the point where this doesn't occur in the future. We're looking at we have went ahead to replace the existing sump pump, which is about 5 years old, with one that will alternate. And one of the things that also had occurred, in addition to the line being frozen where it dumps into the storm sewer, the what are those valves that are on
The check valves?
the check valves had plugged somewhat. So the way that this new system will work, there are going to be 2 pumps, and they will alternate, and then they will, when it switches pumps, then it will rinse off the check valve of the other pump, so that you don't have that buildup that we had this time.
For any of the areas that were damaged, are we doing any type of mold testing?
There really wasn't a need to, because we check moisture levels. We've opened up any of the wood that, drilled holes or whatever we needed to be able to check and make sure that there's no moisture in those areas. And I don't think, from what I've seen, there's no need to be concerned about mold at this point. It did take 3 or 4 days to finally figure out where all the water was coming from and get it stopped. But once we did, then it dried out very quickly, and the humidity level on that, I didn't take a humidity meter downstairs, but the one level above it was like 16%. So it isn't a high humidity level at this point.
Would it be worth, one, checking if that's something that the insurance would cover, and then if it is, just...
We can. What I found in the past, when visually you're not seeing anything, you usually end up, now I don't know if we would in the winter time, but typically the mold levels outside are always higher than the ones inside. I hate to say this, there is no standard for what mold levels should be, unless there's visible mold somewhere that we see. It's really not worth the money to spend a couple $1,000s to test it and find out that there's nothing there. If you can see it, or if I saw something that would lead me to believe there was a problem, I'd do it in a minute. But anything that I've been able to see, I don't see anything that leads me to, basically it's from primarily concrete. And the casework really didn't get enough moisture to cause any damage, and anything that did, we were able to pull out a kick plate or whatever and look underneath and make sure that there's no moisture or anything there. So, it's primarily block walls, concrete floor with floor tile on top of it.
Okay.
And everything that possibly could have gotten wet that would have caused a mold issue, because of past history, we had up on pallets. So all the materials that we had in the book room were, 4 or 5 inches off the floor. And we did check some of the bottom boxes, because the wood on the pallets did get wet, but it didn't seep into the boxes that were sitting on top of it. Now, the last time we had an issue, we had to send several of the boxes. They sent them, and they kind of freeze dried them, which is kind of a unique process, but by actually freezing it, it gets rid of the mold that's on the paper or whatever. But nothing like that this time. This was basically maybe an inch of water or so on the floor, but it was still enough that it did damage to the floor tile.
Okay.
Just kind of in the future, just to be aware, as we were looking at the fire department connection at the middle school, we do have some areas at the middle school, and I also want to check this building as well, where we're going to need to, over the next 3 to 5 years, look at doing some tuck pointing, where you've got some of the grout in between the bricks that's starting to pop out. At this point, we don't think there's anything, the architect is saying that, you know, there was nothing at that point in time that led her to believe that it was something that we need to do immediately. But it is something that needs to go on our long-term plan. And then I think I'd mentioned before, we have a couple areas where we're getting water into the building, but we're not yet able to determine where it's coming from. Everything that's in the direct vicinity around where that water's coming in, there aren't any leaks. So it's coming somewhere else in the building and then traveling along a beam or a pipe or whatever, and then dropping down at a different point in the building. So that's just one of those things that when we have a heavy rain, then we're going to need to get the custodians up in the ceiling looking to see if they can figure out where the water's coming from. You know, it's not something that happens all the time, but it happens occasionally. And it's typically when there's a very heavy rain, and sometimes it's even directionally, you know, like if you got the rain that's coming sideways, then you have an issue. We've had some here in the kindergarten areas and pre-K areas where there's the louvers on the side of the building, and the water was coming in through those louvers when it was kind of going sideways. And that didn't happen very often, but it was enough that, you know, we had to wait until we had something going to be able to figure out where it was coming in at and how to stop it. The fire department connection, scroll down a little bit. I think I've shown this to you before, but we're at the point now where we're going to have some companies come in, some sprinkler companies come in and give us a quote on moving that to the wall just to the left, because it needs to have like a 30 or 36 inch clearance on each side. And as you can see, it's right up against a brick wall. So if the fire department tries to connect to that, it's going to be difficult for them to, well, it just doesn't meet code. Now, why it's been like that for 15 years and nobody's complained, I don't know, but it is an area where I could see that there could be a problem if we had a fire. We lost the city water and they had to connect directly to the sprinkler system to sprinkle the building from their fire trucks.
Dr. Johns, has been any consideration about cutting, that wall is only one course thick, right, or two courses thick?
It's fairly thick.
Okay, so.
And it actually shields, there isn't enough room to remove the wall unless you're gonna relocate the trash receptacles, which then that'll cost more money than it will to spend
So
$5,000 to $10,000 to move the.
If even a square was cut out away from that,
Yeah.
that could allow access to the fire department, if they could look at that and give their stamp of
You'd have to have
approval.
like a 3 foot each way. So
Right.
it's one of those, when I talked to the architect, that wasn't anything that we looked at as
No.
being a good option. Because we have had issues with kids getting into that area too with the trash cans and causing
Okay.
problems as well. So if you open that up, you'll have
Easier for
kids
them to
going
come
through
through.
that opening to
Almost inviting them.
access, yeah. I think I've mentioned this to you as well, the C2 funding. Basically, with the E-rate program, every 5 years we get $1 allotment for network wiring kinds of things. We do have about 6 areas where we've identified to put cameras in that we actually have grant funds to purchase the cameras. But we're also looking not at just looking at pulling wire to those locations, but looking at everywhere that we don't have a projector. We also have a few areas like the copier that we now have located out in the hallway, and we have one here in the media center that are no longer connected to the network, so teachers can't print to those anymore. We have some other areas where we need to add some additional network drops. So I'm kind of finalizing the locations, then we'll have 2 or 3 companies come in, give us quotes, and then we can go with the lowest one of those, and because they're all pre-approved through a consortium, then we won't have to do our own bid through the E-rate program. We'll be able just to use that consortium's bid, and then have these, I think I've got about the names of 5 companies, and then we just need to get a couple, we invite them in for a walkthrough, and one of the companies is a company that we have used for our cameras here, so I'm sure that they'll come and give us a quote, and we'll be able to get that work done. This next item is starting to be a little bit of a challenge. It's the Teacher Retirement System Supplemental Savings Plan. The day before the last Cal meeting, Jason and I got an email saying TRS now has this program and your board has to adopt this by March 31st. And almost immediately, superintendents and school business managers started asking questions about, well, what about this, what about that? Concern about whether the fact that this plan is going to be a 457 plan, it's only going to be offered to TRS members. And typically, when we offer our 403Bs, or if we had our own 457, it would have to be available to every employee in the district. So then the concern is it going to cause us a problem where then we have to deal with ERISA, whereas currently we don't. Making more hurdles and things for us to jump through. Their documents also say that we're going to be responsible to make sure that the employees don't exceed their annual maximum allotments, except the company that we currently use to manage our 403B plan as far as monitoring all that, the company the state's using is not one that has been approved by them, because that company won't submit the documentation so they can't approve them. So there's just lots of things. So between now and the next Cal meeting, hopefully some of that will get settled, and we'll be able to talk to you about what will need to be approved prior to March 31st. But
these are additional savings vehicles on top of the TRS, so like optional. If
right,
teacher
this
wanted
would be
to
an
dump
optional
money.
program.
Okay.
But they're doing it in such a way that because it is a 457 as opposed to, IMRF has a savings plan that people can use where they can do up to 10% more in voluntary contributions. But IMRF deals with that with, they basically just have a flat interest rate that they pay for those funds that are invested. This would be a 457 where you'd have options of funds, et cetera, which then takes it to a whole different level. I do think it might be a good plan. It's just a matter of, a month and a half or so is not really a whole lot of time for you to figure out how that's going to integrate into your district's plans. And basically, they still don't have information yet to release to staff members yet about how it would work. So it's kind of one of those things that it's being done very quickly, and there's a little bit of pushback on our part. So as we learn more, we'll let you know about that. Property tax collection, we haven't gotten any additional property taxes since January 14th. So I believe that we should be getting at least one more collection. So probably now at this point, we're probably looking sometime in March. Ordinarily, we would have gotten our last distribution in January. So it is one of those things that while the 4 payments was nice for homeowners, it does delay, funds getting to the districts in a timely fashion. In our case, it's not causing us a major problem, but if interest rates were higher, et cetera, then we could lose, in future years, if they decide to continue this, we could lose a significant amount of revenue just from, investments. Although personally, I liked it as a homeowner, but as a school business officials, it was fairly good because the first draw was pretty good, but then the future draws were lower. That's about all I have for tonight. Do they have any questions or?
Is that, the asbestos test, is that already scheduled?
They're probably gonna be coming out Wednesday of this week.
Okay. How quick does that turn around?
I think it's fairly quick, but I don't have an exact timeline for it.
Okay.
I know they have to send it into, anything that's dealing with the floor tile has to be sent to a lab. So, you know, you're probably talking, I'm gonna guess 3 to 7 days. But it's still one of those things that even if they find that the mastic has asbestos in it, it's not a hazard unless that's friable, which means that it's kind of in a dust form where it will float through the air. And right now, you know, even though the mastic is released and you've got some floor tiles floating, the remainder of the mastic is still very secure on the floor. So, you know, I'm not concerned that it's gonna be a safety issue.
When you're replacing it, that's when the risk would arise.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if we do have, you know, assuming that it is asbestos and it has to be removed, then they basically tent the entire area, which would be that lower level. They put in fans to create negative air pressure so nothing can get out. And then they remove all the asbestos. I don't know if they double or triple bag it. You know, we did have it, they did that in summer of 2019. And dispose of it in a special dumpster designed specifically for for removal of this type of materials. And then everything in that whole area is cleaned until it comes up, not showing any asbestos present in the air. Before then, they start dismantling everything, and then you can go in and do your other work. So, ideally, it would be nice if that's something they could do over spring break, but part of it is just going to depend on how the timing goes. Luckily, that is an area that's totally separate from everything else, so if it was tented off, it wouldn't create a hazard for anyone. It's just sometimes people feel better if that work isn't going on while they're in the building.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when we did the other stuff, I was kind of right across the hall from where it was all happening, and I wasn't really concerned about anything they did. You know, they did do a good job. Unfortunately, the last crew that we had that got that bid was a little bit slower, but it was because they they kept pulling guys off our job to send other places until we started screaming, and then they kind of got everything done. But, you know, the squeaky wheel usually gets the grease, so.
All right. Thank you, Dr. John. Board reports.
Just one quick one, Brendan.
Sure.
I needed to speak with one of my daughter's instructors today, and she had called me from the school phone system. And if there's any indication as to how badly we need to address the phone system, that was certainly an eye opener for me. The system is very inadequate, and she had tried from 2 phones. So we ended up having to have a cell phone conversation. Just some food for thought, because the phone system is on the future agenda items. So that's it.
Thank you, Jim. As soon as we find one that's affordable, we'll jump on it, I guess. Any others?
What was it? We're looking at trying to marry in with the 117 phone system via like a cloud.
Yeah, we were looking at that. I think we may look at that as well as some other options as well. And that's kind of now that we've had some of these other crises get over with, and we're at the point where we can kind of start focusing on some of those and pulling some things together, getting some pricing.
So it's just kind of been put on pause with everything else? But you guys have been busy with other things this year?
I didn't count on 2 water disasters in addition to all the COVID stuff. And then the unemployment stuff has been going crazy. We're now over 30 of our employees that have had fraudulent unemployment claims filed against them. And so each one of those, I call the people individually, and then I send them a list of what they need to do, and
It's terrible.
it is, I mean.
Kind of mind blowing.
Well, and what I found out in a conversation the other day with, I think it was the personnel directors, now they're getting unemployment claims from now we haven't gotten any here yet, but from Kentucky and another state, I can't remember if it was Colorado, where people are filing in other states against employees here, fraudulent claims, so. You know, they are slowing down though. At one week I got 5 fraudulent claims. This last week I only got 1. But then I got 3 or 4 others that, a lot of times, a lot of them are substitutes and people who haven't been able to work that are filing. So in addition to me dealing with that, then I'm communicating with the principals to let them know that these people are available to work if you got openings, and we have had some openings and been able to hire some of these people to.
So you just
That
have
way
to,
they aren't gonna get unemployment, but we're gonna get some work out of them that we can pay them for.
just to clarify, when you say fraudulent claims, you mean like strangers are filing unemployment claims
Correct.
for our employees, not our employees?
Correct.
Okay.
It's been
So you just have to provide the Department of Employment with
Well,
proof
we
that they
ask
were
the
working, or-
employee to, well, they do a letter that we notarize that I have to upload that gets sent to IDES. I have to provide them with the last 3 paychecks, a pay history of what they've received from the time they say they got laid off until the current date. They have to file with the Federal Trade Commission. They go online and file with IDES as a fraudulent claim, and they also contact the local police department and file a police report. And, you know, we urge them to check their credit histories, which now you can do weekly instead of only once a year. There's like a whole page full of things that I send to them to suggest things that they may want to do, but the critical ones are the police report, the filing with IDES that it's fraudulent, as well as filing with the Federal Trade Commission, because once it comes around to tax time, which we're at
Right,
now,
that's what I was thinking.
if somebody got their money and they haven't filed with the Federal Trade Commission or filed a police report or any of those other things, then they'll come after them for the income tax for that money that they never received. And then if it's determined fraudulent, sometimes they'll even come back on them to try to get the money unless they can prove that they, you know, notified them that it was fraudulent. So it can be really nasty, but it's, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, this is happening all across the country. So it's not anything that people aren't used to, but it is sad that people are taking advantage of the situation, and because of the pandemic, a lot of times the money was being released even before the paperwork was done on our side to let them know that it was fraudulent. So sometimes, you know, they've gotten checks for, you know, several weeks before they get knowledge that it's fraudulent. And I know that people who've tried to call the phone number of the IDES, you know, it might be months before they get a call back. So the quickest way for them is to do it online.
Mine was almost a month.
Yeah. So it's
Are you on the hook for the income taxes on it?
I certainly hope not. It was documented as a fraudulent claim, so hopefully not. We'll see.
Yeah, but even that takes a long time. I finally just got.
And when you talk to people and they say, okay, we're gonna take care of this,
Yeah, forget that, no.
we'll see.
That's going somewhere.
I think I've only had 1 or 2 that I've actually gotten some documentation back from unemployment saying, yes, we agree this is a fraudulent claim.
Yeah, I did get something back.
Okay. Yeah, that's not been pleasant this year. And people, I think, hate it when they get a phone call from me saying, you know, give me a call, I gotta discuss something with you, because they immediately, you know, I've sent out several pieces of emails and things letting people know that this is going on, and if you get something, let me know, and letting them know that I would let them know as well, so. Actually, the one the other day I called and she'd gotten something in the mail at home the day before.
Cool.
So, you know, at least people are very nice about it and they understand that it's not our fault and this is just what's happening, so. But it's sad to see people have to jump through all these hoops just to protect themselves.
Okay, I make a motion to move into closed session for the purpose of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this Act, 5 ILCS 120/2C1. And discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. Second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Veronica?
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mrs. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Pederini,
Yes.
Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
When we come back, we're just gonna close, right?
Yep.
So, if you're watching, when we come back, we're just gonna close the open meeting.